In today's video, I'm going to talk about a very concerning topic that is also taboo. Let's talk about fibroids and my journey with fibroids that led me to having a hysterectomy. Hello, welcome to Nature to Tea, or welcome back, a channel where we talk about healthier options when it comes to food recipes, homemade beauty products, and even personal care remedies that are better for you and you can make at home. In today's video, I'm going to talk about a topic that is taboo, but it is very important because it affects a majority of women. And that taboo topic is fibroids. Let's talk about fibroids and my journey with fibroids that led me to having a hysterectomy. First, let's talk about what fibroids are, the statistics about fibroids, and how it impacts women, especially when it comes down to quality of life. The statistics I found is from the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences, also from the Mayo Clinic. So based on research, 70 to 80% of women have fibroids. It can start as early as your teen years and continues until you hit menopause. Fibroids is a non-cancerous tumor that grows in the uterus. It could be inside of the uterus or along the lining of the uterus, but basically is benign tumors that grow in or around your uterus. Fibroids are estrogen responsive and estrogen dominant, so that means they are sustained by the hormone estrogen. So estrogen is part responsible for the growth and sustenance of fibroids. Risk factors and possible causes are estrogen dominance, stress, vitamin D deficiency, hypertension, having excess fat or obesity, eating highly processed refined foods, toxicity in the food and products that we use. So it could be the pots and pans that we cook with, the utensils that we eat with, the makeup that we put on, the hair products that we put on, the beauty products that we use, the personal care products. All this excessive toxicity that we consume on a regular basis can cause hormone imbalance, which can contribute to your chances of getting fibroids. Having a family history, hypertension, and in recent studies, there are findings or correlations between unresolved trauma and fibroids. So there's some indication that unresolved trauma can contribute to your chances of getting fibroids as well. And studies have also found out of the 70 to 80% of women that get fibroids, Black people are 2 to 3 times more likely to get fibroids than other races. If fibroids are so common in women, why isn't it talked about more, and why isn't there more research? Yes, fibroids are not cancerous unless if you have the rare form. There is a rare form that can lead to cancer, but most fibroids are non-cancerous. They're just benign tumor. But still, there's a lot of women that have fibroids that have debilitating pain, that struggle daily just to do basic things like going to work, going to school, taking care of their children, their house, even self-care, because they are in so much pain due to their fibroid symptoms. Now, everybody is different. Just because you have fibroids doesn't mean that you will have severe pain and discomfort, but these are general symptoms that comes with having fibroids. Some common symptoms of fibroids are heavy menstrual bleeding or painful periods, also longer and more frequent periods, pelvic pressure or pain, frequent urination or trouble with urination, constipation, pain in the lower stomach or back, or pain during intimacy. The kinds of symptoms and the severity of the symptoms you may have with fibroids is individual, so it depends on your body. It depends on where the fibroids are located, the size of the fibroids, and how many fibroids you have in your uterus. During my research, I found that people who have their fibroids in their uterus lining have more problems with heavy bleeding, clotting, and longer periods sometimes because it is inside the lining of the uterus. But if your fibroids are in the outer muscle of your uterus, which was my case, you have a lot of issues with pain, pressure, discomfort, frequent urination, constipation, because those fibroids are sitting on your organs, so they cause pain and cause you to go pee more than usual, which was me. I used to go to the bathroom every 2 to 2.5, 3 hours at max, so that was definitely a huge issue that I was having. One of my other symptoms was also constipation. Even though I do have other conditions, I have nerve issues that causes my digestive system to be extra slow, so just moving things in my body is already an issue, and then with the fibroids sitting on my colon and bladder and all that, did not make it any better. In fact, it made things way worse. So your symptoms does depend on the location of your fibroids and also the sizes of them. They usually use fruits to describe the sizes of fibroids. Fibroids can range from any size, like 1 centimeter, to I've seen people with like 15 or more centimeter fibroids in their uterus. It is unfortunate that the exact cause of fibroids is unknown, and how little studies are being done to find out exactly what causes fibroids and also how to prevent it. Before I had my surgery, I was doing a lot of research on what fibroids are. Even though I've been struggling with fibroids since in my about mid-20s, definitely after I had my daughter. I might have had it before I had her, but maybe it was just undiagnosed. There's a lot of women walking around with fibroids and they don't even know that they have fibroids. And the reason is because people who have fibroids have different symptoms, and some of these symptoms do impact their quality of life. It does cause pain, excessive bleeding, discomfort, pain, and all that. Some have symptoms, but they don't even know the symptoms are related to fibroids, and some simply just don't have symptoms. Prior to me having my daughter, I used to have painful periods and heavy bleeding and clotting at times, but it was manageable. It wasn't as terrible as some people do, but I was never diagnosed with fibroids until maybe about 5 years or so after I had my daughter. My other symptoms were just being on my period. I used to be on my period more than I was not on my period. So my periods will last on average between 10 to like 17 days. So sometimes I'll just bleed throughout the month. My bleeding luckily was pretty light. I used to bleed for like 2 to 3 days and the rest of the days would just be spotting. But one of the reasons why I chose to get rid of my fibroids for good, meaning doing a hysterectomy, is because as a Muslim, we can only pray when we're clean, meaning when we're not on our menses. And I used to not able to pray as much because I would be on my menses like more days than not. So I would be on my period more than half of the month sometimes, or about half of the month. So that was part of the reason why it made me feel uncomfortable, because I felt like I could not pray. Secondly, I do a job that requires driving, so I used to make stops a lot, and using public restrooms is never my favorite thing to do. So anywhere I go, like, I need to know where the bathroom is, because I had to go frequently because I had large fibroids sitting on my bladder and my colon as well. I used to struggle with having bowel movement along with my nerve issues. And I know having a bowel movement is a mandatory thing if you want a healthy body, because you need to move that waste out of you instead of letting it sit in you and creating all these toxins in you. Just because eliminating waste is part of maintaining a healthy body. And my other issue was I looked pregnant. I looked about 4 to 5 months pregnant. This is my second surgery to treat my fibroids or get rid of my fibroids. My first surgery I had about maybe 16 years ago. The options that I was provided was uterine fibroid embolization, and basically that is just blocking the blood supply to the fibroids, so that the blood supplies can be cut off and the fibroids will not continue growing. Naturally, the fibroids will shrink. But one very common thing that I found through my research, and also people that went through a medical process to eliminate or reduce their fibroids, one common thing that they complained about is that almost everyone that I read their story about or watched their video about their experience with fibroids is that it always comes back. It may take a few years, it may take 10 years, but almost always, unless if you get rid of the uterus, chances are your fibroids will come back. And when they come back bigger. That happened to me. That happened to almost every woman that I listened to their story on their fibroid journey. They always come back, whether it's a myomectomy that they get or uterine artery embolization. The main complaint is that their fibroids come back and they come back bigger. And that was obviously my case too. You have different treatment options when it comes to fibroids. Obviously, every body is different, and also, like I said, it depends on whether you want to have kids or not, how bad your fibroids are, your symptoms, and what you're willing to deal with, and how often your symptoms comes around, or if it's something that you cannot handle because you have to work and you're just in so much pain. Some people, experience lots of pain and discomfort, and it really messes with their quality of life. Every woman that have fibroid issues have different experiences when it comes to their symptoms. That's why the choices that people make to address their fibroids depend on their personal experience with the fibroids, the level of discomfort, and also whether they want to have kids or not. So my first medical procedure that I chose to treat my fibroids was to do the uterine embolization or uterine artery embolization. So basically they cut off the blood supplies, and naturally the fibroids will not have enough to eat and they'll shrink. So that worked pretty well for a good 8 years, but then they came back. And when they came back, at first they were okay. They were not bothering me too much. But when I had COVID, I think in 2020, I was really sick. So I went to the ER, and, I was worried that something was wrong with my lungs, and they found out that I was okay with the COVID, but then they told me that they needed to talk to me. They asked me, do I know that I have fibroids? So I was like, I do, but yeah, I do. They basically told me that I need to get it checked out. So I went to get an ultrasound done, and they found out not only do I have my fibroids back, but they were growing. I don't remember the amount of fibroids that they said I had, but the biggest one was 5 centimeters. And then they had smaller, I had smaller ones too. So I did not do anything about the fibroids until about maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, because then my stomach started growing and I could feel the fibroids in me, and they were very uncomfortable. I couldn't do certain things. I like to do yoga and stretches, but some of the movements that I used to do were starting to be uncomfortable because of the fibroids. Also the frequent urination, and I also had frequent UTI because of the fibroids. So that prompted me to go see a gynecologist, who referred me to get an ultrasound to see what the sizes are and all that. So this was about 6 months ago. When they did the ultrasound, they found that the biggest one is now 7 centimeters and that I had over 10 fibroids. So I got a consultation with my gynecologist, and basically to decide what the next step was and what I wanted to do to take care of my fibroids. And at this point, they were causing me symptoms, and my quality of life was being compromised as well, because I would get up once or twice sometimes in the night to use the bathroom. So sleeping already is an issue for me, and I have a nerve condition due to my scoliosis. So already I have nerve issues, I have pain, I have trouble sleeping. Even sleeping is so hard for me sometimes just because I'm so uncomfortable. My back is literally twisted because of my scoliosis. So already I'm struggling with all these things, and it was just becoming more of a hassle to do my daily things. I used to get so exhausted, so tired, because when I don't sleep, I have a lot of nerve pain. It was just a lot. So I was like, okay, so one thing I can do to help myself is, I can't fix my nerves, I can't fix my spine. I mean, maybe I can, but it's not worth the risk. But with the fibroids, I can take care of it. And with my age, now I'm 47, I'm about to be 48 soon. I mean, there's still a low possibility that I may bear kids, but given the fact that I'm still single and I'm 47, that was the deciding factor of me choosing to have a hysterectomy instead of another uterine artery embolization or a myomectomy. And a myomectomy was also offered as a choice. Basically, it's cutting off the fibroids. That kind of sounds painful, and like, at my age, and given that I'm still single, I really don't have a good reason to save my uterus. So that was the deciding factor of me choosing a hysterectomy versus a myomectomy or another uterine artery embolization. A hysterectomy is a major surgery and should not be taken lightly. If I knew what I know now, and if I had started my health journey earlier, I would have, after my first surgery with the uterine artery embolization, I would have been better at choosing better choices when it came to the kinds of things that I consume, especially with food, because a lot of the things that we consume contribute to estrogen dominance, because a lot of foods that we eat, like the dairy, contain hormones, also the inflammatory foods. If I knew what I know now, I would have started my healing journey sooner. And if I had done that, chances are I may not even get to the place where my fibroids grew so big that I felt like my only option was to have a hysterectomy. By the time my surgery came, when I decided, it went from 7, and this is just within 2 months or a month and a half of the ultrasound. So after my surgery, when they actually took it out and measured it, the biggest one was 10 centimeters. So from 7 centimeters to 10 centimeters within a month and a half or 2. So my fibroids were really growing, and I could tell by my stomach. My stomach was growing too. I looked pregnant. So that kind of messed with my confidence levels a little bit. Choosing what to do with your fibroids, obviously everything is based on the individual and what works for them. And like I said, the main factor here is whether you want to have kids or not, and also the level of pain and discomfort the fibroids are causing you. Other thing that I really want to emphasize on is the fact that being deficient in vitamin D, by the way, vitamin D is a hormone. But a deficient in vitamin D is a risk factor and can contribute to developing fibroids. I think it's really important for Black people, especially people that live in the West. It is important that we start taking vitamin D. I need to start taking vitamin D. The melanin is great as a protector. The sun rays that can cause skin cancer and other issues, but it makes it more difficult for us Black people to absorb vitamin D from the sun. There are people that believe that taking certain supplements and changing their diet can shrink their fibroids. By the way, my fibroids were calcified, so when it came to shrinking my fibroids, it would have taken a miracle because they were rocks, they were hard. So I don't know how, even the doctor told me, like, I don't know how people think that they can shrink this by changing or going on extreme diets or taking certain supplements. Yes, if your fibroids are small and they're not as calcified, there are chances that you can shrink them. And when you reach a certain age, like the age of menopause, they'll naturally shrink because your estrogen will naturally decrease when you hit menopause. So for me, even though I am close to menopause because I'm 47, about to be 48, but I don't know when I'm gonna hit menopause, and I was having so much pain, and the rate of growth with my fibroids was very rapid. So I did not want to wait until they get to, I don't know, those crazy big ones like the size of watermelon. The way my fibroids were growing, had I waited for a few months, they would have grown even bigger, and I just didn't want to deal with the pain, the discomfort, and everything else that I was going through. So another major thing that we should consider is lifestyle changes. One of the key thing to being healthy is the food we eat, and that's why I do what I do. What you eat has a huge impact on your health. If you eat a lot of inflammatory foods, a lot of refined carbs, not only are you eating things that are inflammatory, but also you are risking your chances of having insulin resistant issues. And having insulin resistance is also one of the risk factors of having fibroids. So anything that causes growth, meaning insulin is a growth hormone like estrogen. So anytime that you have too much insulin or insulin resistant issues, you have a higher chance of having fibroids. So what you eat plays a major role in that. So when you eat foods that are high in antioxidants like berries, ginger, turmeric, leafy greens, the kinds of foods that I talk about a lot in my videos, the kinds of foods that I make recipes with, those will help fight against oxidative stress. So it will be a antidote to the inflammatory foods that you eat. So if you cut down the inflammatory foods and replace them with antioxidant foods like fruits, vegetables, and things that are natural, things that have been grown from the ground, your chances of having fibroids and fibroids that are as large as mine were would be lessened. And also cutting out stress. I cannot express how detrimental stress is when it comes to our health. Stress does cause high cortisol levels, inflammation, lack of sleep, you name it. Anything that contributes to illnesses and diseases can be as a result of stress in combination with the types of food you eat, your environment, and your lifestyle in general. So not only what you eat, but also what you do. Having a sedentary lifestyle, sitting down a lot, not moving much, first of all, it wastes your muscles, and we need muscles to fight high insulin levels. So movement is very important. And when you're a certain age like mine, if you're over 40, especially as a woman, you don't want to be engaged in high stress exercises like running and cardio, because that can raise your cortisol levels, put your body in the fight and flight mode to where it feel like it needs to store that fat. And also remember, obesity and having excess fat is one of the risk factors of having fibroids. So for me, part of my lifestyle change when I started my healing journey is not only eating healthier, but also doing exercises that are better for my body. That means doing more strength exercises to build muscles and also gain strength. Another way that you can help yourself reduce your chances of getting fibroids is reducing the amounts of toxins you use. Whether it's the things that you consume, the things that you use on your body, or the things that you cook with, there's a lot of toxic things that we use on a daily. Yes, it is almost impossible to not use toxic things unless if you live somewhere in the jungle where you are dealing with nature, eating, fresh natural things. But if you're the average person, especially if you live in the state, it's really, really hard to go toxic free. But you can lessen the amount of toxins you use and eat by eating cleaner and healthier. and also using toxic-free products, especially when it comes to beauty products, hair care products, especially my Black people that like braids, that like wigs, the eyelashes. Yes, I'm guilty, but I do this maybe once or twice a month. But if you're into braiding your hair especially, there's a lot of toxic chemicals in those braiding hairs. And there's studies coming out and exposing these heavy toxins in these hair that we use to put on our scalps. And we wonder why we have so many hormonal issues, you know, when it comes to fibroids, even cancer and other issues. I'm not saying cut out all the toxins. I mean, I wish I could, but that's really hard to do, especially if you live in the States. But you can eat cleaner by eating organic foods and also eating foods that don't have as much pesticides, not eating at all, if you can, foods that contain hormones, whether it's dairy food or meat that contain hormones. Stay away from those foods, because those foods will help your fibroids grow. Also, the kinds of foods that we eat, you know, the highly refined carbs, the fried foods that most use hydrogenated oils to fry those foods in, which, by the way, hydrogenated oils are highly inflammatory. That's why I try to show you guys these recipes that you can make to get something similar to what you like to eat, but in a healthy way. The other thing that you can do to help reduce your chances of getting fibroids is addressing your trauma. Once you start working on your healing journey, it helps you better able to deal with stress and find healthier ways to manage stress, because when you go through your healing journey, it helps you not only identify your emotions and feelings, but also healthy ways to cope with those strong emotions and feelings, to where it doesn't affect your nervous system and causes inflammatory issues. Please resolve your trauma. Also, whatever we eat, whatever we do to beautify ourselves, there are more natural way and less toxic way to do it. And that's why I make these videos. That's why I make these beauty recipes. That's why I make these food recipes, to help people make better choices and healthier choices. I am going to make a part 2 of this video because it's just a lot to talk about. But my part 2 of this video will be talking about my hysterectomy journey, what I wish I've known before, and also things that I think it will be informative for people who are struggling with fibroids to know before they make their decisions. So I'm going to share my journey with my actual hysterectomy on my next video. Make sure you're following for that so you will not miss that video.